Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the MedTech Impact Podcast, where you get to hear from leaders and innovators who are shaping the future of medical technology. I'm Kyle Cruz.
And I'm Richard Meiklejohn.
And we're your hosts of the show.
So today on the MedTech Impact Podcast, we're delighted to be joined by Nathalya Mamane, CEO and founder of RT MicroDx. Nathalya, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here with you.
Well, you came highly recommended from our previous guest, Alison Byers of Scroobius. Recommend checking out that episode if you haven't already done so. And so we're delighted, of course, to be able to share your story and tell more about your innovation. And as always, when we start this conversation, we'd love you to tell the audience, what is the big problem that RT MicroDx is looking to solve?
So the big problem that we have realized is the fact that access to healthcare, especially in the diagnostic space, it's expensive. It takes a lot of time, and it's just inequitable. Like, it's just not fair. The only way for you to get tested upon any kind of symptoms is to have to go see a physician, and 100 million people in the US, so a third of the people in the US don't have a physician to go to. So they're forced to use clinical care facilities or even emergency hospitals, the emergency departments in hospitals. With that making all of it so much more expensive, between the time, the copay that you pay, the extra cost that you pay, fees, depending on where you go, and even like missing work. That's money that is not getting in your pocket. So we're trying to bring, we're looking at, where seeing health testing and diagnosis being such a, inaccessible problem, that is something that we want to address, that we're addressing now.
Yeah, and I'm sure this is fresh in everyone's minds around these types of tests, having lived through the pandemic and obviously having to go for these tests and inaccessibility, and of course, as you mentioned, the cost of that. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the numbers. What are some of the costs you're seeing in the marketplace?
For diagnostics, well, if whether or not you have a physician, whether or not you have healthcare coverage, the deductibles are extremely high. Like, for instance, I have healthcare coverage, and I have a deductible of $6,000 per year to cover, which, by the way, takes me 11 months to cover every year. And that's just like on the low end. I know friends of mine who are in much bigger companies and in big, companies, and their deductibles are like $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 for families. So whether or not you have health coverage, you're basically paying out of pocket every single visit. Now, a visit on average to go see a physician because you have symptoms of whatever, fever, sore throat, rash, whatever that may be, could cost you on average about $300 out of pocket. That's just at the physician's office. And that doesn't include the time to go there, whatever cost it is for parking, loss of work, all of that, all those other costs, just straight out of pocket for going to see a physician will cost you about, $250 to $300 for the visit. And then if you need extra tests, you're paying for these tests. So that could be, it's upwards of that. Now, if you need to go to urgent care, it's more than that. And if you go to the emergency room, it's like double that. So that's until you reach your deductible. But many people don't even have health coverage, which means they're paying for that all the time. And so those numbers are exorbitant and not equitable. Like, it's just not fair for people who are, my husband has a factory, and I was walking through his factory one day, and I see all of these factory workers, and I'm like, if any of their kids are sick, they're not getting paid that day. It's the healthcare system is completely inequitable. It's expensive. It's not sustainable. So, in terms of like unit economics, we're looking at very high cost of care, just even at the testing and diagnostic level.
And Kyle, I'm sure our listeners can all relate to this. These out-of-pocket costs of dealing with healthcare are so expensive, and again, they always come at the worst possible time. And And I'm sure like our listeners now, they're keen to learn a little bit more about what's in store.
Yeah, no doubt, Richard. And I think it's really interesting because as I've, have gotten older and now I've started a family on my own, Natalia, you're hitting on some, really, big, big problems, right? And that things that, I would want to prevent. And there it sounds like there's some significant opportunity here to create more efficient kind of processes in these areas and to bring new technology. So I guess you tell us how are you solving this problem? What's the solution look like?
So our solution is essentially a home test. So it's an easy to use home test that gives you reliable results. So we're basically took the equivalent of a PCR technology, so molecular technology, and we put it in a very small single-use device that uses saliva. So there's no throat swabs or no invasive type of diagnostic mechanisms. It's just simple saliva for now that you can do at home with results in your home. So you're not sending this out anywhere. You're getting the results at home in about 15 to 20 minutes. And they're presented in a way that consumers are already used to seeing. Just like you guys had we all saw the COVID test, which is a 1-line, 2-line. It's 2-line positive, 1 line is negative. We all know how that works. So instead of creating this really expensive and electronic, highly electronic type of system, we've created a single use, similar to COVID tests or similar to pregnancy tests, but for infectious diseases or respiratory diseases or any kind of diseases that right now use molecular testing as their gold standard.
And it sounds like something that's so obvious, and maybe
You would
that's
think.
right. I mean, and so I guess why aren't these types of devices and products available on the market today for in-home use?
Okay, so first of all, let's start with the fact that our beachhead market is for strep throat. So strep throat is a very big market. So if we ask the question, why aren't these already existent, on the market, is because before COVID, there was no room for the gold standard was that you'd have to go see a physician. The physician would have to look, check, touch, see, and then test. And that was like the gold standard. And then COVID happened. And during COVID, there was no touching or seeing or anything of the throat, especially opening the mouth during that time. So physicians were doing this remotely using the camera of the computer. And so it kind of opened the door to physicians realizing that there could be a way that this could be done, and seeing the door kind of opened to having the possibility of doing this remotely. And so we just came in with the idea at the right time. Actually, I came up with this idea before COVID hit, and it just sort of basically validated it during COVID, and now after COVID. And the other problem is the fact that physicians are just not enough physicians. We just don't have enough of them. So by leveraging the power and the technology behind telehealth platform, we actually give a lot more access to people to get tested at home, diagnosed virtually, and get treatment if they want to in a timely fashion.
Okay. And I mean, there clearly is a need for this. There's no doubt. And I think, you painted a good picture with COVID, all right, and the demand for COVID tests when COVID first came out. But what about, there must be are you seeing, maybe a slew of companies trying to enter the market in this
Yeah,
area?
100%. So there's a few. And most of them are, started. They already had technologies ready to go before COVID, and COVID kind of put them on the map.
Okay.
And they're molecular. We use the same science in essence. We use the same type of science. We use an isothermal amplification method that it's called LAMP. Which basically gives you a very strong, robust molecular reaction. It's a strong, robust test.
Mm.
the difference between what they're doing, what we're doing is, first of all, they're focusing on viral infections. So in viral infections, there's no real treatment per se. Like if you have the flu, you stay home. If you have, if you have RSV, you basically stay home. If you even have COVID, you stay home unless you're at a certain age and you want Paxlovid, and you have to have tested very early, like really at the onset. If you wait too long, then the virus just, nothing will help the virus. It'll just stay on track and then naturally get better. We're addressing a bacterial infection, which is strep, as a first indication. And with that indication, we feel like we're disrupting a little bit more of the diagnostic process because you have to see a doctor for treatment. So it's not, nothing is done in isolation. And it's done, you're actually bringing in the physician, you're including the physician just more efficiently. So that's what we're doing that's different. The other thing that they've done that's different is that it's a model that we're not following. Like theirs are much more expensive, so not necessarily more accessible to everyone, not affordable to everyone, and not accessible because of their price point. They're only sell online. So if you want to test today, you have to wait until order on online, unless you have some at home, which are expensive to begin with. So their model is different. They have a 2 model system where you have a base that's at home that's plugged in to a power source, and then you have a disposable, and you need one to work with the other. That's not a model that I wanted to work with. As a parent, I kept thinking, what do I want? What do I want to have? And what I want is, if my kid's sick, or if I'm sick, or whatever it is, I can go to the pharmacy, get what I want, get my result, get treated, get seen, get diagnosed right there. And so I was just looking at what's a price point that I would pay for, what is all these things. And I've developed a solution that kind of meets all the needs that I would want to as a parent.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like it. And it sounds like also, Richard, we're getting into, that go-to-market strategy, which is incredibly important. So Nathalya, I thank you for helping us kind of understand that pathway and how you plan to, approach the market a little bit different than the customer, than your competitors. But I think, Richard, we should probably dive a bit deeper into that.
Yeah, absolutely, Kyle. What was coming through loud and clear, and the point you made, Kyle, about really understanding your customer, the patient, when you're talking that language of you as a patient, as a customer yourself, and what your family wants. And Kyle, you said, how you could relate to that as a father and your own family and thinking about these problems.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, again, on that go-to-market strategy, what's the next step? How are you going to actually get this into the hands of patients as you go forward?
So there's a few ways that we can get, there's a few ways we're going to get to market. We're going to go to market in phases. This will need FDA clearance for sure. So, we're going to finish it, and then we have to have it go through clinical trials, and then an FDA. So as a first, go to market is going to be go to market to just, it's going to be a companion diagnostic. So like selling this to pharmaceutical companies, drug development companies who need to test, who need to use it for internal purposes for their own trials. But if we were to sort of like fast forward into how do we get to market into the hands of the customers, well, there's 3 major markets that we want to get to. We want to get direct to consumer, so directly on the shelves. When you want it, you have it. That's the number one. That's that's the one that is gonna it's gonna basically address the problem that we have, which is the problem of access. And so we do that. It's going to take an enormous amount of marketing to educate people that yes, you can do that. It's gonna demand us to get the buy-in from physicians, to get a physician to say, before coming here, why don't you go take a test? And I have a parallel to that, and I'll tell you in a minute. But so that's our goal. Our goal is for the doctors to say, you call the doctor, and the doctor says, go take a test, and then let's talk. And that's what I am hoping. That's sort of like my goal, and that's what I want. The other thing that we see to get to market is through the public school, that school systems through the different public health agencies, right? We want to put this in the institutions, whether it's in universities, in public schools, in private schools, and in like elementary schools. We need to put this in the schools so that a parent is not called and say, oh, your kid has fever, or I mean, if they have fever, they have to go home, but oh, they have a sore throat, what do we do? Or they have a little rash, come pick them up. Like there's all these things where it's probably nothing, but if you get to test at school, there's no fever, the kids feel fine, and there's all these symptoms, they can go back to class, and there's much less missed school, because that's a huge problem today. Kids are missing school, like the numbers are just exorbitant. And then finally, it's like making telehealth more efficient. So going through the telehealth platforms, there are so many telehealth platforms out there, and they just don't have the tools. So what they'll say is, okay, well, go get a test, go to a lab, get yourself tested, and come back. Now you're missing the point. So we need to leverage the fact that we have that technology in place, and we need to make it more efficient. And so those are like the 3 markets that we want to target. And that's once we have FDA clearance. But just a really quick thing is, 10 years ago, when a woman had an UTI, they would have to go see a physician, and they would like make you pee in a cup, and then they would test the thing, and then that's it, right? And then they would treat, and that was like the process. That was a workflow. Well, today you can just go to the pharmacy, you can take a test, and then you call your doctor, and you're like, I think I have a UTI. Did you take a test from the pharmacy? And you're like, yes or no, but these are my symptoms. Okay, I'll prescribe you something. So, there's it took time, whatever time it took time, but it did convert. And I think that what COVID allowed us to do is to allow the door for that conversion, or for that process to change. And so that's where we want to go into.
That makes total sense. And I think piggybacking that trend about, with the go-to-market focused on the hospital moving to home, we're seeing a lot of the pharmacy moving from the hospital setting to the outpatient clinic, your typical places you would go and get your products from. So that makes a total sense. And I think the thing I loved as well was, seeing all the stuff you're doing in the background. So you were like an MIT launch winner, you've been part of the Babson program. And so runner-up, but still, getting recognition. And I think that's something that all founders should be aware of is, you're going out there and you're getting support from the ecosystem, you're getting recognition from the ecosystem. And as much as you're thinking ahead and you're go to market, the building blocks and the way you're tapping into the ecosystem is very cool. So, could you tell us a little bit more about, what you've got planned ahead, maybe, coming in the next few months?
So, the things that really carried me through were these opportunities of being at accelerators and in these pitch competitions, right? It really helps you to refine your message and your problem and your solution. And until, in 2023, I had a very set, definition of my message, of what my problem was, and all that stuff. And then come, Q4 of last year, I'm like, something is off. Like, I don't think that I'm approaching the problem appropriately. And so what all of these kind of programs have taught me is to constantly rethink and question what your message is. And so now I've been able to refine my question. I've been able to sort of peel off a little bit of the onion of what the core of the problem that I'm trying to solve, and really how the solution is solving it, and all that stuff. And so what's next is, trying to like infiltrate myself even more into the ecosystem. So focusing into programs that are much more medtech focused, diagnostic focused. So, for a long time, I did a lot of these programs that were pretty agnostic in terms of there was no focus per se. It was, you had food, you had healthcare, you had, well-being, whatever, you had all these things. Now I really want to focus not just on life sciences, but med tech and diagnostics. Like, I think that that's where my space is. I've narrowed it down to where my space is, and broadening my ecosystem and my network within that space. And that's where I'm working towards right now.
Great, and clearly building as you go forward. And you touched on a little bit there, and I'm sure Kyle can probably dive deeper into this now about the regulatory pathway and how that's shaping up.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Richard, that you bring that up because as Nathalya, you were talking about your product and your test here, your diagnostic test, and talking about it, being on the shelves of pharmacies. I mean, is that a different regulatory and reimbursement pathway since maybe this might not be something that's prescribed?
Oh, so that's a lot of good questions. So let me break it down. So you do need clearance, you do need regulatory. This is going to be, and by the way, this is a de novo classification. So that really comes to show that there's nothing yet in the market for, the detection of strep, using saliva for strep, home testing for strep, all that stuff for strep. And again, this is my beachhead market. We'll have to explore the other, the other indications when we get to it, but for this beachhead, so this is definitely a de novo, and there'll be a class 2. It requires a very simple clinical trial. It's just a 1-phase clinical trial of about 600 subjects, and then you go into the FDA. So, we would like to know, I want to believe that we're on track to be ready for market in about 2.5 years, which allows us to finish the product now, and then go to clinical trials by next cold and flu, so we can apply for FDA, and it'll take about a year or so, and then we are ready for market. So that's in terms of regulatory. In terms of reimbursement, so over-the-counter devices are not reimbursed. We know that. COVID was reimbursed because it was COVID tests were reimbursed because it was COVID, and it was also funded by the government, by a huge government program. But that's not going to happen much longer, and not all the time, depending on the upticks. But the point is that they're generally not covered. However, I am working on a strategy for reimbursement if you speak to a doctor and the doctor says, I will prescribe you a test. So if the test is prescribed by a physician, so I call my pediatrician and I say, my kid's sick, it has all right, I'll send a prescription for the test, go pick it up at the pharmacy. Even if it's over the counter, she could still claim for reimbursement for that test, because otherwise she would have taken the test at the doctor's office. So I'm looking for that strategy right now. I'm working on that strategy as we speak to see if there would be a path to reimbursement only if there is a prescription associated to it. Well, having said that, we are on track to make these tests so inexpensively that they'd be ready, they'd be priced for retail at an average price of a copay, which is about $30 to $35, making it a lot more affordable than having to go see a physician.
And do you have a minimal viable product right now that's being used by physicians today, or at least getting feedback from these physicians on your diagnostic test?
So we don't have an MVP. What we have is a working prototype that is a single use. It's small. It's the size of a business card, where you put the sample, it runs the isothermal amplification method, it comes through our technology, and then shows on a very simple lateral flow assay strip. So we have a working prototype, and right now we're in the process of updating that prototype so it could be placed in the hands of some kind of clinical setting.
Sure. And initial feedback from
Yeah.
maybe any physicians, what has it been like?
So in terms of initial feedback from what we're working on, they're thrilled. They're
Good.
thrilled. They want to, they're like, this is not coming fast enough. Like, we needed this yesterday. These, they get bombarded with so many calls, especially during the season, so many calls of, my kid's sick, sore throat, what do we do? And they're so busy. A lot of people just end up going to urgent care and paying more. So they're not getting that revenue anyway. And so there's, they want to be able to treat their patients more efficiently anyway. So they're very excited about it.
Again, this is so relatable because was I not just in an urgent care with my 6-year-old sitting there for 5 hours, even with an early check-in kind of feature where you can go online and reserve your spot. It doesn't matter. I'm still waiting around 5 hours only to find out that the throat culture came back negative. And I'm over
Yes.
here like, "You've gotta be kidding me." Oh, and by the way, my daughter can't stand throat cultures. Tell me, are there no throat cultures needed?
No throat cultures
Come
needed. The
on!
plan is you spit and you get your result. That's it.
Whoa! See, come on now. If my daughter heard that, she'd say, "Give me all the tests," you know? But
No throat cultures, no throat swabs. No, no, no. I mean, as a parent, I don't even know. I'm a smart parent. I don't even know that I would swab properly for these things. Like the kid would be like moving and crying. Forget it. I wouldn't do it.
And I swear, right hand, not even lying. My daughter, they had to do it to her twice because
Yes,
they said it
I
came
believe.
back and she was already like crying and daddy, I don't want to do this again. I mean, now granted, it's a throat culture, toughen up, kid. But still, it's just like obviously you can tell you got me excited here because you're doing such a great job at telling the story and helping us understand the value in obviously your diagnostic kit and what you're bringing to market today. But it's not all rainbows and butterflies, right, Richard? We know
Yeah, I mean, this is
that.
exciting stuff. Like hearing like game-changing solution, big problem to solve, super
Yeah.
relatable. But of course, we like to talk about challenges, and one like at the top of everyone's mind right now is funding. And I know you mentioned before we came on, you were at JPM earlier this month. Amazingly, we're already somehow in week 4 of January. But yeah, what's your thoughts around fundraising and attending JPM earlier this month?
So actually, I just published a blog about my experience with JPM. So you can look it up. You can check it up on LinkedIn. So first of all, last year was terrible. I've self-funded my entire venture to date. It's been now 2.5 years. I'm quite a bit of money in, but that sort of like proves to show like how determined and dedicated I am to bring this to market. Before I continue, Kyle, I just want to tell you that my pediatrician says she has to hold down kids the size of football players for a stupid throat swab. So your daughter gets a pass. So
All right.
I'm just
It makes
saying.
sense.
I'm just saying. So last year, back to funding. Last year was terrible. And so I've dabbled on funding last year, fundraising, and I was like, I'm not going anywhere fast. Like it's not working. It was completely dry. I would go to these conferences, and these conferences would be like, I'd speak to these investors, they'd ghost you 2 minutes later. Like it just was a complete waste of time. So I said, I'm just going to keep creating value. I'm just going to keep building my product, keep building my technology, making it more robust. And that's what I've been doing. I launched my prototype in the meantime. There's work to be done on this prototype. We need to launch a second one. But in the meantime, I've continued building value for the company. And so that's really where I focused. I went to JPM. It was my first JPM. I called myself a JPM virgin. Like I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I was nervous. I was anxious. I didn't know if I would be able to meet people, or I didn't know anybody. Like, and people, but you don't know if you're going to run into them. And it turned out to be pretty amazing. I had the opportunity to pitch at as a seed venture for Biotech Showcase, and with that, I had access to their portal and make meetings. And in 2 days, I had something like 15 investor meetings, which I thought was amazing for my first time. But but on top of that, I got to meet people that got me more meetings, right? So I got to pitch and I got to really like talk about my venture to so many people, and many people got excited. Like you could see the excitement. So, have I gotten a check yet? No, but we're only a few weeks back from JPM, but there's definitely movement. There's conversations, there's second meetings coming. So I can feel the wind has turned. I don't know to what extent. But it's not so much that last year was bad, is the fact that I'm in diagnostics, and diagnostics has a really, really bad reputation. Really bad reputation. There's just too many diagnostic companies that have failed and that are continue to fail. So I believe that I have a great solution. I believe that I'm addressing the right indication at the right time for the right market. But, it's very hard to get investors who've been severely burnt and lost a lot of money from diagnostic companies that, promised the moon and ended up crashing and burning. So there's a lot of things that I need to overcome when it comes to, my space, the economy, the economic, times, the investors who haven't really yet picked up. So there are all these challenges. But I'm definitely seeing the wind turn. Like, I met with these people like, oh, I love diagnostics. That's what I'm focusing on. Oh, I never met one person last year who's like, I'm looking for diagnostic company, like not one. This year I met a few, and they want to continue conversations, and we already have, follow-up meetings. So I'm hopeful. I'm excited about what this year is going to bring. And I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to keep bootstrapping until I get traction here. So yeah, it's challenging. It's definitely the hustle, especially as a first-time founder of a company in biotech, in diagnostics. It's not easy, but I'm getting through it.
Well, kudos to you for making it happen and getting out to San Fran and diving in there when you've not been there before. And clearly it worked. That's a great sign by getting all those investor meetings, and it kind of makes me think I'm excited for the year ahead, Kyle. Things are starting to align for
Yeah.
Nathalya.
Absolutely. And just real quick too, I must say, Nathalya, obviously, before we get into these shows and recordings, we do our background homework, right? Our research on our guests. You did not come from the medical device world. You
Oh,
are not a doctor,
no.
and I think that right there is going to blow people's minds when they hear me say that after listening to you tell you a story and share your technology and innovation with us, because it truly shows how much this means to you. And it just, it's contagious. Like, you've inspired me through just this recording, and hearing your story has been just, it's been so much fun. So, props to you. And,
Thank you.
I love that you're staying true to yourself too. You're betting on yourself, you're betting on the future, and you're a mom. No
Yeah.
one knows best. Mother knows best, right? I'm quoting Mother Gothel right now from Rapunzel, okay? I
Yeah.
am. This is what happens when you turn into a dad, a girl dad too, by the way. But mother knows best, and you know the best way to take care of your loved ones, the people around you, and your children. And so you can see that, really inspiring, and drive and motivating, yourself, and it's driving you to really, pursue your dreams here. So with that said, let's talk about future milestones here. What are we seeing in the next, say, 6 to 12 to 18 months for the company?
Well, the major milestones is to take our prototype and convert it into a consumer product. So that's the next big milestone. We are in the process right now of optimizing everything that goes in it. And then it will be partnering up with the product development company that will help us take our prototype and bring it to a finished product. And that finished product is going to go in the hands of, we're already looking at different preclinical research facilities that will, we're looking at maybe going into a university that have, students who are sick that will test it and then compare it to a regular throat swab and throat culture. So we want to do that. And the hope and plan is that we get to the next cold and flu season with a finished product ready for official clinical trials. So throughout the year, we're going to kind of develop this product as we develop it, put it in the hands of different clinicians who's going to test it, give us feedback, and go back and forth like this until we can have a finished product that we can manufacture in small quantity and then bring it into an official clinical trial campaign. and after that, it's going to be, going to the FDA and presenting this to the FDA. And that's it. I mean, we've done so much already that, we just have to just, keep, stay on track and just like follow the follow the road to commercialization. And
Sure.
I feel very confident that we can do it in the next 2.5 years, but we will need funding for that. So
Okay, well, there we go. I mean, funding is a big piece of this. Is there a number too? Do you have an active raise going on right now?
we definitely have an active raise to get to my final end. So to get to FDA clearance, we need about $5 million. And we're basically raising now in tranches. So my first raise right now is for 1 million. As soon as I close that, that will get us closer to, a more, robust MVP that we will, do another raise for the next milestone. So yeah, so in the next 2 years, it'll probably be a raise of $5 million, but for now, sticking to $1 million, hoping that, if you're not raising too much, that, the investors will be more, more open to listening.
Sure. And what about people along the way? Are you looking to add any specific types of
We are definitely
experts
looking,
to your
yeah, we're
team?
definitely looking to grow our team. So I feel like I have a very strong scientific team, which are basically, my executives. I have a CTO and a CSO. One is a biochemist and one is a physicist. And both of them are the brains behind the science and the technology. But now I need to kind of grow build a robust business. I feel very comfortable with the actual technology and the science and the product. But we want to do more than just this strep test. We want to make this. This was built around a platform. So we developed the platform and now focusing it right now on strep as a beachhead. So, trying to raise our executive team, bringing in, commercialization expert, a product development expert, as part of the executive team to kind of round off all the things that we're missing.
Perfect.
And Kyle, that was such a great point you made about Nathalya coming into this industry whilst not having experience. I think that lends itself into the team. And what I see when I look at your website is you've built this fantastically diverse team of experience, of skills, of background. It makes me think about, this whole process and how you reflect on that. What's been the big learning? If you were to give one or two pieces of advice to young entrepreneurs or people who are thinking about starting their own medtech startup or biotech startup, what advice would you like to share?
I think the first advice I'd like to share is talk to everyone. I think one of my biggest strengths is the fact that I'll talk to the wall if the wall talks back at me. So I'll talk to everyone. I meet people on the street. I almost signed an investor at a pool when I was, vacationing in Florida last year. And he introduced me to a whole bunch of people. So talk to everyone. And it's having talked to everyone that allowed me to build that team and to be very passionate about what you're doing. So a lot of people have come to me and say, I'm thinking of doing something in healthcare. I'm not sure what. Well, let me tell you something. This is really hard. And you have to know damn sure that this is the problem that what you want to do is a problem that is solvable and that you can solve. Because don't, to go into and whether it's biotech or medtech or any kind of company, or any kind of, in any kind of like space, it's not about, wanting to go in. It's about having a very clear path to what you want to do. Saying I want to be an entrepreneur that's not a path, right? And people have come to me and said, what do you think? And I'm like, go in the world, go work, go in your job, be successful in your job. And when you're in your job and you're doing a job that you love, that you're passionate about, and then you realize, I wish we had that in this space because this is missing, then go and develop it. And, in my case, you're right. I'm not from this space at all. I was in hospitality for 18 years, and then I pivoted by going to school, and I had to look at, my job, other than what I was doing for work, my big job was being a mom. And when I looked at what is missing in my life to make my life as a mom better, was I really don't want to go to the doctor every time my kids have a symptom. Like, it's a complete waste of time. It's inefficient and expensive and all these fun things that we talked about. So I found that pain point and I pursued it. So, my biggest, my two advice, going back to, my two pieces of advice is talk to everyone. And number two, be very clear about what you want to address, and then go find the problem, and then go find the solution for that. And if you don't have it, then wait until you find it, because it's really hard. And dabbling in this and looking for money for something that doesn't exist, it's just a waste of time.
Amazing. I love the fact you talk about pathway there. I mean, it just makes me think you already have this clear vision in mind. You know where you want to be. You know how you're going to get there. But the clear thing that came through there is you're going to validate at that earliest stage. You're going to make sure there is something worth solving. Fantastic. Absolutely love it. But of course, again, that vision part, I would love if you could now share, if you look forward, the horizon of 5 years' time, where do you see the company? Where would you like to see the solution?
My dream of all dreams is, you go to the pharmacy and right by the Motrin, or right by like the Tylenol, or by the cold, medicine, that you see all these tests that, tells you test for, these symptoms and test for these symptoms. That's where I see it. I see like a library of different tests for different indications, and to just have people just go pick them up. That's where I see the company, whether this is an acquisition type of opportunity, or me developing it to make it big. I don't know, but I think ultimately I want to be able to go to CVS and see it, and see people being able to test from home. And that's where that's my big goal and mission. And yeah, and
And
for more than
Nathalya,
just strep.
what about also being able to say, hey, remember the throat cultures and throat swabs?
It's
Those
gone.
things, those things are the worst.
Yeah,
You know, you guys will never know because you never had to do that, But
that's true.
maybe one day you'll be able to say that. Maybe one day we'll be able to get a call from the school nurse. Hey, your daughter isn't well, but don't worry, just
It's
gave
not
her a
strep.
test and it's not strep, so we're keeping her here. That's right, you are. Back to class. Anyways, so many great opportunities and such a great vision. Nathalya, how do people get in touch with you if they want to give you a bunch of money, or join your team, or just talk?
Well, they can reach me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. They can email me directly, and Nathalya at rtmicrodx.com. I'm very available. And you know what? It's not just those who want to give me money, although I would love to talk to them, or people who want to join my team, but also any student out there who feel like they want to learn more about, my journey, or what they should do or not do, or whatever. I feel like I was given the opportunity to speak to so many people who are willing to help, that I want to also pay it forward. So anyone who wants to know more, who wants to learn from my experience, I can't tell you that I've succeeded or not succeeded. I'm still on path, right? I'm on path, and I've no end yet in sight. So I'm just kind of moving. But as I move, I learn a whole bunch of things, and I'm happy to share all of those experiences with anybody who wants to learn. So yeah, you can reach me on LinkedIn. You can email me directly. I'm very responsive.
Well, Nathalya, this has been an absolute pleasure. Recommend everyone going to rtmicrodx.com if you want to learn more. Again, Natalia's details shared there. Recommend getting in touch with her if you can help her on the mission. This has been so awesome. I'm feeling informed, feeling inspired, Cal.
So am I. So Nathalya, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so, so much for having me.
Awesome. Well, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the MedTech Impact Podcast. Once again, that was Nathalya Mamane, founder of RT MicroDx. I'm Kyle Cruz.
And I'm Richard Meiklejohn. Until next time, keep innovating.